Bon, alors là, on a le décodage, conscience phonologique, reconnaissance instantanée. Ah, c'est chaud!
When we think about teaching our children to learn to read in our home language, we often try to figure out how we can teach them to recognize this letter, that character. But this is only part of the equation. And today I'd like to talk to you about this rope and how it links to teaching our multilingual children to read in our home languages. Let's get into this! Hello everyone, this is Yoshito Dogman Shimamori. I'm the founder of the Library for Multilinguals and the author of the Parent's Guide to Raising Multiliterate Children. On this channel, I share with you weekly tips on how to teach your child to read and write in your home languages. So if you'd like to have more of these tips, make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon. And today, I'd like to talk to you about this infographic that was first made by Dr. Hollis Scarborough, who is a leading researcher in early language development and how it later links into literacy. I leave the link down below in the description. And it shows how much is involved in reading. There's the mechanical part, which is about deciphering letters, characters, and recognizing phonemes, syllables, and words we read often. The second part is to do with language comprehension. And this is a part that we often forget about, and that's why today I decided to do this video on explaining how you can help your child develop these parts of literacy. So you can see here that there are different parts to language comprehension, and we're going to explore them one by one. And the first one is background knowledge. This is to do with how much your child knows about the world around them. So it can be physical phenomena, such as the fact that water boils at 100 degrees, but freezes at 0 degrees. And anything cultural or to do with customs of a certain country. So when your child lives abroad, they don't get to pick up on all this knowledge from various sources. And this is something that can be missing from their knowledge when they're reading a text in their home language. The second one is vocabulary, and this one is quite self-explanatory. It means that the more words your child knows, the more complex the text they can access. And when a child is schooled in a language, they are going to pick up loads of things from different subjects, different teachers, friends. But when it comes to your home language, it's you plus maybe a few more people. So the amount of words they'll be able to absorb, pick up, will be much reduced. This means that little by little, there'll be a gap between the school language and the home language. The more time passes, the more your child will improve their school language, but the home language will maybe lag behind. So we see just after how we can help our children to increase the variety of words they know in our language. The third one is language structure. And this refers to the fact that words need to be in a certain order to make sense. And understanding how a sentence is structured is going to help our children to understand better the text they are reading. In our home language, it's worth mentioning that our children are used to the way we speak to them. And although we may know loads of ways to express one idea, we generally tend to pick one way. And this is called an idiolect. It's the way you speak. But when reading a text, a child will be exposed to various ways to express an idea that might not be the words you use or the way you express it. And this might make the text a bit more difficult to access for your child. The fourth one is verbal reasoning. And this means that they can work out some information that's not mentioned in the text. They can imply information. And of course, the more words they know, the easier it will be for them to do that. And this is a transferable skill. So if they learn it in the school language, they can transfer it to the home language. And the last one is literacy knowledge. This just means that different texts of different genres are written in different ways. So if you read a newspaper, you won't get the information the same way as if you're reading a comic book or you're reading an email. And this can change from one culture to another. And now we've seen all the components, let's try to see how we can help our children to improve on this language comprehension. So I'm half French, half Japanese. I grew up in France, and that's where I learned to speak, read, and write in Japanese. So the environment I was in was all French, and my mom was Japanese, And I also went to a Saturday school when I was in primary school to learn Japanese, to read and write as well. And when I was in secondary school, I was in the Japanese section in an international school. So I had about 6 hours of Japanese, literacy, geography, and history. So this means that compared to someone living in Japan, I had a lot less exposure to Japanese. And generally, whatever writing I would see was in textbooks. And although in primary school there wasn't such a big difference between my French and my Japanese, with time the gap became bigger and bigger. And because I knew more words in French, I could access more complex texts in French. In Japanese, there were 2 barriers. First, I had to be able to read the kanji, so the Chinese characters, and I had to understand the words. Even if I could read the kanji, sometimes I didn't know the meaning. And this dissuaded me to read some books in Japanese because it was a lot more difficult. I didn't get as much pleasure as when I was reading in French. And today in this video, this is the main part I want to talk about. So how you can help your child to expand their vocabulary. And for this, there'll be 2 parts. First, how they can expand the number of words they know, the variety of words they know. And second, how we can help them be familiar with different idiolects. So not just your way of talking, but loads of different ways of expressing the same idea. And if you want to know more about this, feel free to check my blog post. I put the link in the description below. So for us, as a multilingual family, with French and Korean as home languages, and English as the community language, the school language, the main way we get all this vocabulary in the house is through books. Because let's be honest, in school and outside, our children have a lot of opportunities to hear, read different words in different contexts, but when it comes to home language, generally it's quite similar all the time. So they'll be doing the same activities, we do the same kind of things at home. We might sometimes do something special, but generally speaking, it's quite the same. But in school, from the different subjects, they can get loads of different new words that they can then use afterwards, and they became part of their vocabulary. So I mentioned before that books could be quite difficult for your child to access because they wouldn't know all the vocabulary, they wouldn't know all the different ways of expressing an idea. They might understand if you said it with your words, but they wouldn't understand in the book. So it is really important that you read with your child. And it doesn't mean that once they're able to decipher words, you can let them read, and precisely for this reason. Because even if they can decipher the word quite confidently, it doesn't mean that they can access the full meaning of the story they're reading. And on this note, research shows that we need to understand about 95% of the text to be able to pick up new words from the context. The less of a text you understand, the more difficult it can become to just work out the meaning of a word. This is why if you read with your child, you're able to help them bridge this gap. You can explain an idea with your own words, and they'll be able to bridge the gap between the words they can see written and what they mean. With television, it's quite the same. They can get loads of vocabulary. They have many opportunities of hearing new words. The only difference is that with books, you can stop whenever you want, explain, then carry on. It's quite easy. With television, if you want to stop, you need to pause it, then go back. If it's live TV, you can't do that. And generally, children tend to ask less questions when they're watching a film or a cartoon that carries on, where the action carries on. They don't want to miss out on the action. I mentioned before that with the home language, it was quite the same all the time. It doesn't need to be that way. We can, of course, get our children to experience new things. We can go camping and learn about nature. We can go to the zoo, learn about animals, and talk about animals. And the more varied the activities we're going to present to our children, the more likely they're going to pick up new things. Because especially when they experience new things, they want to be able to express their opinions about it, talk about it with you later, so they're going to remember the words to be able to use them later on. When it comes to familiarizing our children to different idiolects, books are also very useful. So for example, when I speak in French with my sons and I use a negation, I never use the ne pas, that's the correct form of saying a negation. I just use the pas, which is a bit more informal. But through books, they've learned that ne pas is the proper way to say a negation. And I told them that when they want to insist that they don't want to do something, or they want to insist it's not something, they need to use both. And now they do it. So when I say let's do this and they don't want to do it, they really say ne pas clearly. So they know how to use it in the way they want to express it. So to summarize, you might be the only person speaking your home language in your child's environment. It doesn't mean that it has to stop at you. Books and cartoons are really useful to supplement your own vocabulary. Whatever you can say, or whatever situation you can help your child experience, the books are going to bring a lot more. It's going to show your child different situations, and they'll be able to understand how to use different words. They'll be able to pick up a lot of the language, whether it's the structure of the language, the grammar, the words. So books are fantastic for that. The only thing after, as a parent, that you need to do is to find the right resources. So the books that your child are going to love. For example, the first books that my children loved was Dogman, and we have loads you can see in French and English. And the author have written other books. We have them in Korean as well. In Pikid as well, we have it in French and English. And now a big thing that my children really like is La Boîte à Musique in French. So they can actually access something that doesn't exist in English just because they can read in French. And this is really why we want our children to be able to read in different languages, just to be able to access more things. So it goes hand in hand. You help your child access some books they like, they learn some vocabulary, it will help them access more complex books and get more and more vocabulary. But the key thing is really, especially at the beginning, is to help your child access the vocabulary. So read with them, watch the cartoons they like with them, talk about it with them, so it becomes relevant to them. And even if they grow up, you don't need to stop. The author Adam Beck talks about the fact that he reads to his children who are teenagers different books in English, because that was their home language, for them to be able to access the content of the book, to get a wider variety of vocabulary. I hope this video helped you understand the importance of the language comprehension part in learning to read and write. It's not just about deciphering letters, characters, it's also about the vocabulary that they need to know. If you like this video and would like to get more tips about teaching a child to read and write in your home language, subscribe to the channel. Bye!